friends, welcome to another Wsib Truth Matters with Joe Machado. I hope you're enjoying this beautiful weather on this Thursday afternoon. Man, that sun is shining. Yeah, I know you hear me say this all the time, but this is my favorite time of the year. Anyway, so we're going to get into this video. This is a subject that has been at the forefront on my mind. And I know many injured workers' minds, including many of my clients when I was still active with my company. This is a hot subject for the WSIB. They're like a cat and water. Cats don't like water. At least the ones that I've known. But you know what? It's got to stop. I mean, look at how many lives have been ruined because of this practice of deeming. You probably feel more like you've been damned if you've experienced that. And I know there's been a lot of efforts to try and reverse that strategy. Some political efforts, others, some local unions and injured worker support groups. There's a ton of activity out there that's, been working to try and reverse that policy, but nothing's happened. And injured workers their lives are falling apart. I mean, if you don't have income to be able to support your family and some stability, the family unit begins to suffer. The government doesn't give a shit about that. I don't get that thinking. I know it has a lot to do with money. There's no question about it. I mean, this started when David Marshall was hired to come in and slash everything in sight. The government gave him 10 years, or up until 2027, to get rid of the unfunded liability. He did it 10 years ahead of time. How did he do it? Where'd that money come from? And then they took $1.5 billion in surplus. How do you go from $12.5 billion in unfunded liability in a short period of time, less than the realistic projections the government had in place, and end up with a surplus? How does that happen? If you're not charging employers more to end up with that surplus, which they weren't, where's the money coming from? Claims that aren't paid, that are denied. You guys all know this, but it pisses me off. It's criminal in this country that that's taking place. So, is it legal? It is. It's legal. And the tribunal has supported the board in this position. I've looked at over 200 tribunal decisions, and every one of them concurred with how the board was applying its deeming practices. But how does that even work in the real world? And what is it? What is deeming? Because a lot of people still have questions about it. It's very simple. It's when the WSIB, when there was a determination that you wouldn't be able to return to your pre-injury job at your pre-injury earnings, they had to come up with something else. So through labor market reentry services or work transition services, they do assessments, psychovocational assessment, yada, yada, yada. They come up with this goal or suitable employment or business or suitable occupation. They keep changing the terms. And then they look at, okay, what's the entry-level wage for this? And then what's going to be the average earnings for this? And then a fully experienced worker. And they give you that occupation. Okay, yeah, this is good for you. Sometimes the worker didn't even have anything in say because he had to cooperate. If not, he'd be cut off. So you get into that cycle, and when it was felt, it usually was done in the initial determination, the D1 part, and usually at that time there were still some return to work activities taking place. And then at the R1 review 2 years later, workers started seeing a cut in their future economic loss award because the board now decided that, yeah, they were able to earn more. And then the real shit came down at the R2 review, which is now you're 60 months or 5 years into your claim. Actually, no, because there's at least a year to 18 months while they're still doing, medical rehabilitation, figuring out if you have a permanent impairment and all that kind of stuff. So now you're a good 6 years into your claim and you get your benefits slashed again because now they deemed that you're able to earn what a fully experienced worker earns in that occupation. And the same thing happened with LOE when Bill 99 was implemented. The same nonsense. And a lot of times it was jobs that there were no jobs available, that the worker didn't have the qualifications or experience to obtain. A lot of them were just phantom jobs, shit that they pulled out of a hat. And by the time you know it, your benefits are going down the toilet faster than you can take a crap. Sorry. Literally that. And then you find yourself disabled, significantly disabled, unemployed, and your benefits are being slashed all the time. So, is it fair? No. It's not fair. It should have never happened. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to continue. They'll build up another $1.5 billion to give to employers on your backs. Because they have no scruples. None whatsoever. If they cared about injured workers and their families, they wouldn't have these punitive policies that only serve to slash and slash. The impact, and I don't have to tell you this, because if you're watching this video and you've been injured after January 1st, 1990, and you fall under Bill 162 or Bill 99, you probably had this happen to you. And you're probably still wondering, what the hell happened? So, how do you change it? I mean, there's a number of groups that have done a lot, and it's falling on deaf ears. The current government has absolutely zero motivation to change it. They could have taken that $1.5 billion, put it back into the funding for injured workers. So here, this is where that money is needed to get these injured workers healthy and strong and to go back to work, become members of our society, productive members of our society. Instead, a lot of them scramble. They go to Canada Pension Disability. Some of them get approved for that. And then the Wsib offsets the whole thing. And some of them are forced to go on ODSP to feed their families. How the hell are you going to do that? It just doesn't make any sense. Any reasonable person, any reasonable thinking person would look at this and say, this is just robbery. It shouldn't be happening. There is one MPP with the NDP government in Niagara Falls, and he's made 2 attempts to have that repealed. He's tabled proposal in 2019, and he got shot down. It didn't make it made it through the first reading, but that was about it. And he tabled it again in December of 2022. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's highly unlikely. Because a government that's concerned about injured workers and keeping them healthy, keeping a good, solid, strong workforce healthy, invests in them and doesn't give money to employers who are the culprits. That's where injured workers got injured. Just like a thief comes into your store and steals something, you say, okay, no worries. Why don't you take this, put that in your bag, and this one too, and hey, how about this one for the neighbor? I'm not saying employers are entirely culpable, but if injured workers didn't go to work in their workplaces, they wouldn't get injured. So why is it that they get the shit end of the stick? So I have a plan to address this. Because I've been watching this crap now for 20 years. And I fought for my clients in that system. And as I said, I looked at the tribunal, reviewed over 200 decisions, and they're siding with the board. I don't know why, because it doesn't make sense to me, but they are for some reason. So how do you address it? On the short term, very easy. On the short term, you request a reconsideration of that very first decision that led to you being deemed. And I'm going to tell you exactly what that decision is. That decision is the D1 decision in the Fell situation, where they first deemed that you were going to be able to earn some stupid rate at a job you had no clue what it was, or even if it was going to be available. That first decision, the D1 decision. And when it comes to LOE, that first decision where they deemed where there was a suitable occupation or business that was picked, that one there. You start there and you flood them with all of this. And you stick it back in their faces and say, you know what? I'm smarter than I was when you tried to take advantage of me back then, but now I got the tools, and I want you to reconsider every one of those freaking decisions. And they have to, by law. By law, they have to. That's the only legal way in right now, until that legislation gets repealed and not replaced with some other stupid word like determined. Any word that gives them the opportunity and the flexibility to write a policy that's going to serve them, they will use it. So the language has to be very clear in the next legislation, the next piece of law, to eliminate this criminal law that they have now. That's the long-term plan. So how do we get to the long-term plan? Well, we need to band together. Every agency, every group that has a vested interest in this. I've already reached out to Mr. Wayne Gates, the NDP in Niagara Falls, to offer my help in any way I can. But I'm going to help, regardless of whether anyone wants to join up. I'm going to do what I can, because it needs to be done, right? It's the right thing to do, and it fucking needs to be done, and it's about time that it gets done. But how does it happen? How do we force them? Well, I know that every time that they're looking for a vote, they come knocking on your door. So, here's another thing that I know. This movement, and when you watch my videos right at the end, it talks about a movement. This is the movement that I'm talking about. Because it's bigger than us now. It's for the next generation. Your kids, your grandkids, my granddaughter, the next generation. Because if we don't safeguard their benefits and do something right now to protect them, they're going to be screwed. That you can take to the bank, and I know you know that. We can't let that happen. We take care of the short term, which is the reconsideration process, because you're going to send a lot of stuff their way, and they're going to have to scramble to deal with it. And I've seen how that causes policy and policy changes. But to have a long-term impact on this, it's going to require going beyond the injured worker community, beyond you and I, okay? It's not going to happen if it's just you and I, the injured worker brotherhood. It won't happen. I'm telling you right now, it will not happen, okay? We need to go beyond that. And how do we go beyond that? Well, we take the message to those who don't see it coming yet. And at some point, you were that person. At some point, someone close to you, or a friend, or an acquaintance, somebody you knew, was injured. And you thought, no, I'm not going to be that person. I'm never going to be in that situation. Are you kidding me? Where are you now? Requires a little self-reflection, because everybody can be that person. So we need to go to that person who's thinking, oh, that's never going to happen to me. But it does. They need to be on board with this. Your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, your cousins, your friends, they need to be a part of this, because this is as much a problem for them as it is for you, because nobody knows when they're going to be that person. And you know that when the shit hits the fan and you're desperate, you're like, holy shit, I can't believe it happened to me. I never thought I was going to lose 2.5 fingers in my hand, but I did. That's just the reality. So accidents happen. They're always going to happen, despite what the idiots say. But without a plan, you get the same of the same, right? You start throwing darts and hoping that some of them are going to stick somewhere. But in order to accomplish real change in the long run, you got to roll up the sleeves and you got to say, enough. No more of this shit. I'm not going to stand for it. So, friends, I know I've given you something to think about. This is an important thing, really, really important. And I know a lot of you are listening and you're going, yeah, this needs my attention. You're not required to do anything. Just follow the process that I'm putting in place, because we will gain momentum. At some point, I'm going to start going out to different communities throughout the province, like I did years ago with my company. I did a bunch of seminars, meeting people face-to-face, talking to them about how this is a problem and how it needs to be fixed. Because we can't wait. We can't wait to the next government. We can't wait to the government after that. And after that, we just can't. This is urgent. This needs to be looked at now. You need to have that sense of urgency to be part of it. So the first step is subscribe. Subscribe to my channel. It doesn't cost you anything, but I'm going to communicate with you the efforts, the things that we are going to be doing. Okay, friends. As always, please subscribe. Coming up next week, on Monday, I'm going to talk about chronic pain disability. There's been a lot of requests for that. And on Tuesday, I'm going to talk about psychotraumatic disability. Some people think they're the same. They're not. They're two very different policies. So I'm going to get into those discussions to help any one of you who has been affected by that. And always check out for my shorts. I haven't done some in a while, but I'm going to. So you can get a sneak peek of what's coming up in my videos. All right, friends, and as always, enjoy this beautiful weather. Until the next one. Take care.